you introducing me, or am I introducing myself? So, I hope you can hear and see me behind this gigantic desk. We're slowly starting, so if you don't mind, close the door already. For those getting coffee, please do and come in. For those that need translation, now is the point to start it, otherwise you're gonna miss the beautiful speech I have prepared. Very good morning to all of you. I feel privileged to see so many people. We're virtually running out of seats. This is something I don't experience every time I'm on a conference. So thanks for coming. This is highly appreciated, and it sort of explains how important that topic is to all of us. All right. So good morning. I see many familiar faces, some new faces, and many thanks for being with us today. We have prepared a very special event with great presentations, with so much opportunity for exchange. So this event is none of the sort of suit and tie events which you can see here that you expect. Sorry, but it's an event in which I invite you to participate, to exchange opinion, to have a discussion. This is really how it is designed. Let me kick us off by a couple of words. I don't want to take much time with the welcome speech, the mostly boring, but a couple of sentences if you allow me. So, Friedrich Ebert Foundation, for those that don't know, is the oldest political foundation of Germany. It is committed to the advancement of socio-political and socio-economic development. We're tied to the social democratic movement of Germany. And we are honestly very proud of today's event and the discussions that might follow. We have been working in Kazakhstan for almost 30 years. Next year is our birthday and we turn 30, which is quite a success for us. In Kazakhstan, we work on many issues ranging from gender equality, we work with the government to advance rule of law. We work on foreign and security politics, on what we call socio-economic transformation, and obviously towards tackling climate change and other issues. Today's event sort of fits our agenda and is, if you ask me, a very timely and important event. I mean, think about the circumstances we have seen in the last 2 or 3 years, right? We've seen the pandemic that displaced many people, that affected workers and communities around the world, that sort of led to an increasement of injustices, of inadequate social protection, unequal access to public goods, and many more issues. So the current circumstances of, let's say, post-pandemic, I know it's not over yet, but let's say post-pandemic economy, but also the war in Ukraine, the January events, they paint a very grim backdrop against we all work. So domestically and also externally, we're in a challenging situation, right? So addressing those circumstances, socioeconomic circumstances, injustices, many more, is vital to build and keep a stable country. Not a country also, but also states and cities, and we're going to come to this in a minute. But my point is, as FES, we support the mission of creating stable, fair, and just communities around the world. And don't be fooled, all of these issues I try to draw on, they're very much represented in the arenas of cities. Hence, the focus on cities today. And cities is really what we call home in the future. And I have some data on this. I just Googled this morning, but 2021, 4.46 billion people lived in urban arenas. 4.4 billion. 3.4 billion live in rural areas globally, and it is projected in 2050, so just right around the corner really, that almost 6.7 billion people live in cities. So when I'm saying that all of the issues we have as communities, as countries, as humans really, they're issues that materialize very, very much in cities. So the arena of the city and thinking about injustices in cities and how they link is crucial to tackle the problems, the gigantic problems of our time. My colleagues Mirelem and Dana and Adil, they will build on this later, and they will explain the concept a little further, and we will have many discussions on this to explain what we have in mind. But I already sort of spotlighted that we believe that the city is an arena in which these injustices materialize and need to be tackled. So you see, it's a broad topic today. It's a topic that, you know, will move beyond the initial idea. It's not a standing topic that will not change over time. That's why I said it's not a suit and tie event for you to lean back and just consume. It's an event of exchange, deliberation, and discussions. So yeah, let me finish by saying, again, thank you for coming. I'm happy to see so many faces, and I'm happy that we are running out of chairs. We will get new ones if needed. And I'm happy to have a couple of inputs that are interesting. One of the inputs we're going to have the very morning is incredibly special to me because it's from Kenya. You might ask, why Kenya? I've been living and working for the FES in Kenya before, and the colleague we invited to talk about the Just City project in Nairobi is a good friend, and he's an expert. And then again, you would ask, how is Nairobi relevant for Almaty or for Kazakhstan? And I would invite you to just keep an open mind, because you would be surprised how many of those issues they have there on the far end of the world from this perspective are similar to the issues you see around the world, but also in Almaty. So yeah, thank you very much for coming. I stop here, and I invite you to keep this an active conversation, because again, this is an open conference, an open exchange. Thank you.
Thank you, Christoph. My name is Adil Nurmakov. I'm the director of Urban Forum Kazakhstan Foundation, and we are the partners of Friedrich Ebert Stiftung with this project, under this project, the ÄdilQala. And now let me address you with a short welcome as well. Well, the society always has a demand for justice. It is our natural instinct that helps us identify the situations where injustice happens, whether towards to ourselves or towards to our close ones. However, the nature cannot tell us how to handle those situations. The nature has different laws. The society and humanistic principles that the humanity has been developing for ages, they all pursued the goal of achieving the justice through moral norms, through institutes and procedures. But along the way, we still face and will encounter imperfections and the new phases of injustice, and we try to overcome those. That is the goal of the public progress, or societal progress. In the context of the city, we speak about justice as the equal opportunities, irrespective of gender, age, racial status. Maybe those are things that refer to safe environment, healthcare, education, generally adequate and good life. The justice for all is the goal and is the process at the same time. So both goal and the process. The process is that it implies that we will be dealing with something that we didn't know before, that we haven't seen or haven't encountered before. And therefore, this process requires engagement of all stakeholders and many more, and other than those who traditionally participate in such discussion, not only the participants, not only the researchers, the activists or responsible officials. not only the people who already are part of this process. It's absolutely crucial and important to make sure that voices of those who face inequality, injustice are also heard. It is absolutely important that mainstream players or the participants of these discussions show empathy and listen to opinions or situations that may not be close to them or that may not be somehow connected to them, but which nonetheless are also important. Any city is the place where different interests clash. Any city is an area of conflict, and the level of justice of any city is measured by how the city handles those injustices. We are convinced that the key aspect of justice is a dialogue. You cannot get the balance of interest without open discussion. And this is exactly the topic to which ÄdilQala is devoted to. The ÄdilQala, the Just City, and we are happy to announce the launch of this project. Well, Miralim, please inform us what project is going to be about, what our project is going to be about. Thank you, Adil. Well, I also would like to invite Dana Shayakhmet over here. She's the member of our team. And Adil, can you please run the presentation? We would like to tell you briefly about the project. I'm the scholar or researcher of Friedrich Ebert Foundation. My name is ÄdilQala. I'm very happy to see so many people at this online event. Just a year ago, we had a presentation of our publication, COVID-19 in Kazakhstan, and we missed the events without people wearing masks. And this is our presentation. Myself and Dana are going to very briefly talk about the project. If you have any questions, then please approach us or ask your questions right after the presentation. However, today, during the day, we will have discussions related to the topics that we would like to cover. So I ask you and encourage you to participate very, very actively. So let me talk about the essence of ÄdilQala project. It's a project about justice, inclusive dialogue, and it's a human-centered, man-oriented, person-oriented. So, of course, we're talking about the social justice, and there is another aspect, which is sustainability. As the climate has, Christoph had already mentioned, climate, of course, is very important. Climate change is something that plays an important role in. Let me add, my name is Dana Shayakhmet. I'm the director of Creative Industries Center in Almaty University, Almaty. On top of that, I also am a public activist, and I'm very happy to be the part of this great team. And when we gathered together for the first time, we actually said, we when gathered together, we said we want to do this outstanding project that we didn't want to invent it ourselves. We really wanted to do it together with the participants, with the residents, with the people who take the decisions. And we're very happy that when we gathered for the first time a month ago, and Marilyn will show you the slides, and there's also our first initial discussions, that the thesis, the aspects that interested us, that concerned us actually, found response and reaction in many other participants, and that was manifest and expressed in their thoughts and ideas. And we have decided to advance the discussion and to finally present this project. All of us here said this is an open platform for discussions. Everyone who is participating here can become active participants of this project just by default. And Miriam is going to talk on how we're going to implement this project. But what's the most important, that we do not want to have very clear definitions, very strict definitions as to where the project should evolve towards. We do understand that change happens so quickly, and change for the city happens so instantaneously that a project like ours may have to change and evolve all the time and have to select and choose some priorities. We do have the priorities, and we're ready to new ideas. As we have already told, okay. Sorry, there are some. So We have been thinking about this project, about the name. Well, we do know that you need to create a brand, you need to sell it, you need to make sure there is buy-in, it needs to be accessible, digestible, convenient, and comfortable. And we've been thinking for a while. We had different options. Last one was ÄdilQala or ÄdilQala. ÄdilQala is a dream city. Actually, we thought that the dream city doesn't quite fit this goal or this whole premise. Yeah, Arman or dream can be different. Someone wants 8 lanes on the road. Someone wants only cycling lanes. Someone wants green city, no skyscrapers. Someone wants just modern and urban and very concrete city. So we decided actually that ÄdilQala is the best thing. And actually this is the name that we were going to be used as hashtags. Yes, we also thought that we have Adil Nurmakov on top, and then we thought, why not? Yeah. So let me talk about the goals that we have planned to discuss. But from the start, let me also tell you that these are not carved in stone. We can modify them, we can transform them throughout the project, and we welcome you to contribute. If you see that a particular goal is not covered or that particular topic is not mentioned in our discussions and follow-up applications and in the project, actually, you are welcome to do and submit your proposals, your ideas, and talk about and speak about the things that have not been mentioned. So they actually have highlighted these topics. And on the 13th of May, we had a discussion on social justice, and we had a brainstorming session on how and where people, city residents, see injustices happening in the context of these aspects that we have selected and highlighted. Well, we had an open registration for this event. You may have seen it on the websites of the foundation or Urban Forum's website. And actually, we're very happy that many people have joined, and there were state agencies, public agencies, and non-public agencies, and we discussed it in a very facilitative format. And guided by Jana Prashkevich, we had this very interesting facilitation process where each participant could contribute to one of the directions. So let us show you some slides. And I think these are the what our final process looked like. And I think we covered all of the directions. So we will go briefly through that, but they're available here. Make sure that you pick a copy from the table over there. I think the most important thing is the participation of the citizens themselves, participation of citizens in decision-making, participation in the process of discussion, participation in informing and awareness raising. I was absolutely happy to note that our citizens, residents, treat understanding of the city and kind of the whole city as a responsibility. So when you look at the management and the city and management, city administration, there are two hands kind of reaching to each other, trying to shake hands. But this is actually, this is a very good depiction of the January events. And actually, January events have showed us that we need to move towards each other, and then we need to ask the questions jointly. And the Justice City or ÄdilQala or Fair City is a goal towards which we can move forward together. Please make sure that you look at this. We have very interesting records and we have very interesting pictures. So again, as I said earlier, these goals, objectives may change, may transform, may evolve. And what Dana has mentioned, of course, we didn't have those two hands as far as I remember. We didn't have them from the start when we had the governance and table, when people started discussing and brainstorming. That was the kind of a cross-cutting line that everybody saw that there was a state and there was a society and there were two separate parts. But eventually, during the discussion, in the course of discussion, we had sort of a closed cafe format, and then eventually this whole slide of the whole banner has transformed into this very interesting idea where we had different parties engaging, interacting with each other. So we also thought, you know, in the beginning, we thought that some points will look like this, but they ended up looking so totally different. So just like that, we can change and modify all things. So as for the activities that we plan under the project, we're going to have the publications. They can be short publications, and there will be a big publication as well, covering and encompassing all the topics that we have mentioned. There will be online and offline events, discussion platforms, and there will be public talks, workshops, and so on. So we will be doing all that. We will try to do all that under this project. As for communications and what Dana has said, we welcome you to the dialogue. We encourage you to participate in the dialogue, and there will be online and offline platform. If we have an offline event, please do come, please do talk, do speak, do participate, do show what you are, and show that you are not indifferent, show that you care, and raise the issues. And as for the online, there will be social media, websites, etc. We will be disseminating and sending out all the information. Once all the platforms are ready, everything will be posted there, and we'll send you the invite.
I'd like to add that I see a lot of young people in the audience, and I rejoice. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you for being so active. Also, in addition to coming to our event, I would very much recommend that you also participate in scholarly publications, to participate in different projects as active participant, not just simply coming and listening, but to understand what kind of engagement you can have. It's obvious that there's a new wave coming, a new Kazakhstan, that I dare to call it that. We can develop it together. We can do so only through active participation. So please do use this opportunity. Thank you. So that was briefly about the project. If you have any brief questions, we can have a quick exchange, and then we'll have the next speaker. So we have a 1 minute. Just don't forget to introduce yourself and be quite brief. Anvar Radio Sector X, you said that your project is inclusive. What exactly do you mean when you use this term, and what vulnerable groups of residents will participate? Yes, it is going to be an inclusive dialogue. Of course, we don't have a full list of groups of people who want to add. This is an open place for everyone who is interested, and inclusion is not only capacities, but also different opinions, different outlooks, and we'll be inviting different actors for dialogue. So that's what makes it inclusive. Should there be no further questions, then I'll call it. Is already on Zoom. Yes, let's launch Zoom. But we're here, and you can always come and ask your questions.
Thank you. Politics law at Mathematics Management University. My question, the project seems very interesting. I didn't get what is your final objective? What's your key achievement that you want to reach through this project? Just open dialogue, making people, the public, aware about how the city evolves, or intervening and changing the city as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Greetings to colleagues from AlmaU. When we discuss this project, the project lasts a certain time, and in the end, you have an outcome. And in our minds, we have a notion of what is it that we want to get. In fact, we want to get a lot of things. We hope that it will develop in a variety of forms going forward, but then we decided to stop ourselves and thought, should the project develop together with its participants? So together with city residents, we will develop it. So we thought if we set a final goal, we may skip opportunities. So after the first discussion, we saw people from the public council of Almaty joined us, and people from the local legislature joined us and asked for results of our discussions at the very first stage. We didn't plan on that, and we thought we will work on the project, and then in the end we'll go to the local government and we'll be telling the results. But it's a good thing that we've chosen this open format. The result would be developed as we move forward. And participants who come and will be coming to our events will help us formulate. We have our own notion. We don't want to tell it, for we sincerely hope that the very term just city will stay in public minds and can develop in a sustainable movement even that will continue supporting with participation of citizens. Thank you. Yes, I see there's another question, but let's leave some time for discussion because we have our speaker here. Let's listen to him. Let's discuss the Kenyan project and then we can come back to discussion. Will it be fine if I switch to English? Or should I stay in Russian?
He's our colleague from Kenya, office in the city of Nairobi. Titus is the project coordinator, program officer, and he's also coordinating the project Just City Nairobi. They already had a lot of discussions. The project is running. They had 2 publications on Just City Nairobi where you can find a lot of interesting topics. And as Christoph mentioned before, that a lot of topics, a lot of problems are really similar in Almaty and Nairobi or in Kazakhstan and Kenya. So this is why we invited Titus, so he can explain what they did in Nairobi, talk about also the changes that they did already, some success stories and else. Thank you again, Titus. So you can share your presentation, and when we will have questions, I will let you know.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me loud and clear?
We can hear you.
Okay. Thank you. As you've heard, my name is Titus Kaloki. I have been now 6 years with the FES here in Kenya. We started our Just City project in 2018, and it's been quite a journey. I already like some of the issues I've had partners there raise in terms of understanding the Just City. What do we mean by it? How does it apply to our contexts? Before I go ahead, I just want to share that we do implement the Just City in Kenya with a partner organization whose logo you can see above there, the Civil Society Urban Development Platform. This is a organization that provides a platform for various civil society organizations who are interested in urbanization matters and projects to discuss how do we achieve this in a just manner. Yeah, but let me continue. So for us in Kenya, the Just City, when it was introduced in 2018, it was a foreign concept. We first discussed with our country representative, and we were borrowing as FES the concept of the Just City from Dr. Susan Feinstein. She was a scholar in Harvard who had coined this term because when she traveled to London, when she looked at New York, and when she looked at Amsterdam, she wondered, why is it that these cities are very rich, developed, but at the same time you find people who are homeless, people who lack housing, and therefore she thought there is a need to encourage planners, policymakers, to have a different approach to urban development. And her idea was basically to combine what the progressive city planners who are leaning towards having equity, having material well-being, to come up with ideas that also consider the diversity of people in the city and empower their participation so that the outcome is a better urban life. Of course, acknowledging that we live in a global capitalist political economy. So we struggled with what does it mean for us here in Kenya, because We've thought this maybe applies to those global north developed cities, but we realized in Kenya that we have been unknowingly struggling with the justice question since we started experiencing urbanization. As you can see, from 1969 to 2019, urbanization was rapidly growing from 9% to almost 31%. But the results were unjust cities, as you can see from the picture. People living in informal settlements, lacking basic needs like water, electricity, sanitation. At the same time, you have those who are living in better houses, having that access. You have big roads for cars. So we had been struggling with this question of how do we ensure urbanization benefits everybody? And therefore we said, let's try and see from the Kenyan perspective what the Just City means. We have a very progressive constitution which guarantees rights to basic services like housing, electricity, water, health. But we tried to see where do we fall in also in the global agenda, because Kenya is a party to decisions that have been made at the UN level. And here we were looking at the Sustainable Development Goal 11, which says it makes cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. And you can see all the details. It calls for affordable housing that is safe, access to sustainable transport systems, participatory human settlements, and even a safe and inclusive green and public spaces. So for us, this gave us a bigger anchor, like to help us come with a vision of what a just city would look like in Kenya, while at the same time trying to answer what is a just city in our own understanding. So what that did is it helped us to formulate first the guiding principles for the just city in Kenya. This was important because, yes, we have the global agenda that we have signed on, the SDG 11, but we needed to understand the just city in our context. And so through the civil society urban development platform, we brought together a wide array of partners. We had grassroots civil society organizations that were fighting for maybe single agendas like housing, water, electricity. We brought in built environment professionals like architects, urban planners. We brought in some progressive actors from the legislature, some of the politicians who are also championing the rights of people in the urban areas. And we discussed what the Just City principles could be for us in Kenya. And anchored on that global goal, we realized that one of the things we hold very dear is the dignity which affects the quality of life of the citizens. This means that in our Kenyan social context, borrowing from our values, everybody deserves to be treated with dignity, whether you are poor or rich. You should be able to not be embarrassed. And for example, what this means in practice would be in affordable housing, somebody should not lack proper sanitation. We had a lot of people living in the slums who could not access a toilet, and this robs them the dignity that they have as a human right. Then we also looked at our cities were not being inclusive, and I like that one of the participants there asked, what you mean by inclusive? We realize sometimes the city is just looking at the able people, young people with energy, people who can work. It does not provide for those who are living with disability. We realized even our central business districts are unfriendly to families. It's rare to see children in the city or old people in the city. So we realized that there was a need to look at each of these people's needs differently because of the diversity, and then through equity provide for them so that we leave no one behind and no place behind. Then we asked ourselves, yes, we do deserve all these things. Are they anchored in law? Are they rights? Yes, we have some that are rights, some are not. So there is need for policy to support that. But also, what is the responsibility of the citizen in terms of participation, shaping the urbanization ideas and policies? And that's how we came with the principle of rights and responsibility, so that it helps move that policy front, but also protect rights. And finally, we looked at democracy because it is key in our constitution. All governance systems and even urban culture would not be possible if only one voice was being heard. In Kenya, there was a fascination to build these new shiny cities with smart technology, but they seem to be discussions that happen between big financiers and the government, but the people really did not get a voice to say whether this is what they want and how would it work for them. And that's why we say democracy must always be at the core. So as a Just City working group, which as I've mentioned, has all these different players, we asked ourselves, why is it that we've not achieved this Just City before? Because people have been pushing in their own spaces. And we realized from discussions with other partners, even our Asia offices, that we were conceptualizing the political change in a different manner. We thought the problem was that these actors who are already convinced that we need a just city simply lack the knowledge and the skills to demand and ultimately bring about the political change required. This was because the assumption is that those who have the influence are interested in reform. They just don't know better. So if we just give them the knowledge, then they will help to change things towards a just city. And that's why in the past, we relied a lot on training, legislators, training city planners, capacity building of grassroots on how to organize protests or do policy recommendations, organize study tours to go see in other cities which have achieved progress, how they've done it. But change was not coming. So we said, maybe we need to think of it this way, that those of us who are convinced and want to see a just city simply lack the political power to implement the reforms, because those who are benefiting from the current status quo are too strong. So then what do we need to do? We must assume that if we move from the current status quo to a just city, influential actors would lose some of their advantages. And that is why they block these reforms. So the only way we can do it is to find a way to reach them, to help them change their perception of the benefits of the status quo, that it's not necessarily that they will lose, but they can still benefit in a just city. And this takes time. It takes a lot of investment in coming up with evidence, coming up with research, looking at the progressive actors from those who are in the status quo to change them into allies so that they help to progressively change their systems and their institutions. And this is where we use the instrument of helping people to change their understanding, their references of what a just city means, of what urbanization means. And therefore, they're able to calculate the costs and benefit themselves. For example, if a big bank has been benefiting from building just big blocks of houses and being paid by government, and then these blocks of houses do not have amenities for school, for children. They don't have amenities for social interaction. They don't have green spaces. We were able to show them that if you do provide those things, your property will not lose value with the time, because we showed them in previous experiments, even from the West, the US, Europe, when they did that, these places became segregated. The people who are there were not able to have a meaningful life. So many moved out, they were not maintained. And in the end, they lost appeal and value. So it was through small discussions, trying to build evidence here and there, that we tried to help them to rethink their approach of the just city. And this just gives you an overview that the first step, we had to jointly discuss the vision. This is the long-term view of the bigger picture. What does a just city mean for us? How would it look like? Once we had that, this process took us almost 18 months of discussions. Once we had that, then we said, let's have the change narrative. This is which steps, progressive steps, do we need to take so that we shape the policy that would help us achieve this just city. And this was an outcome of a lot of debate between different actors. First, to change how we interpret urbanization, understand our expectations, even how we define our complex urban interests. And after some time, we started to say, okay, maybe a just city is possible. And for example, what I could share there is our cities in Kenya, they are planned for cars, and only 13% of people drive, 40% of people walk. But the urban planners and the government never thought it's important to look at these people who are walking, be for them non-mobile transport, walking lanes, cycling lanes. So once we were able to convince them through a lot of debate and research and evidence, they needed to do catalytic projects. And what I mean by this is a small project that shows what you're saying is possible and helps to convince not just the government and the urban planners, but even the people that it's possible, because some of the people who walk never imagined that they deserve their own walking lane next to the cars. So we were able to do a small project with one of our newest cities to demonstrate just 1 kilometer of non-motorized transport. And people start to say, aha, this is quite possible. And now the city wants to implement that. So to finish, I just want to demonstrate that we started with the alternative vision. So we said we are not going to conform, but we want to transform. Because conforming means doing what you have seen elsewhere, just doing what urban planners say, this is how it's done. We have always done it this way, but trying to come up with a new way of doing things, that is to transform. So to do that, this civil society group, the Just City Working Group, had to do the publications, as you've heard, so that we could shape public opinion. We engaged with media. We even have now done a documentary, and we keep always trying to share that a different vision is possible, a Just City is possible. But how do you strengthen that from just being a wish? And that is where we came to the change narrative. And here we had to invest in knowledge. So on the topics that we had chosen, if it's affordable housing, we had to do some research to show what would be the alternative housing in a Just City. We had to look for alliances. These are people who are not always with the civil society. Maybe they are the ones who are responsible for urbanization projects and plans, and try to show them, and I've mentioned some there, the private sector, the professional spheres, the urban managers, and the cities. And we would host events, showcase the evidence we have for achieving a Just City, and try to influence them. And this has taken almost 2-3 years now, until finally we came to the catalytic projects. And one city became very receptive. It's called Nakuru City. And we use it like a laboratory. So in this city, as I shared before, we've been able to do a small 1 kilometer of non-motorized transport. We have taken an informal settlement, and through support from the University of Dresden in Germany, who have a 3D social planning tool, this small community has been able to, in a 3D environment, show what their vision for a just settlement would be. And we have been hosting monthly dialogues, bringing different actors from the Nakuru city to shape what they call their Vision 2050, which would include affordable housing, open spaces, non-motorized transport, and so on. And this is a process that is ongoing. All in all, I can say it takes time, it takes clarity of understanding what your vision is and what it means, then building the knowledge and then alliances, and demonstrating through small, tangible projects that this is actually possible. Thank you.
Asante sana, Tito. It's so great to see you, and thank you for sharing your path really with us. I believe that the challenges are quite similar here in Kazakhstan, and we can learn so very much from you. Thank you, really, and all the best from Almaty to Nairobi.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Now, I would like to open a short session of Q&A. Should you have any questions related to the project, Titus, who has implemented a JUST project in Almaty, can answer them. Maybe there are some questions related to the course of the project or to engagement of the society, any other details you want to know. So now the floor is open for questions, and then I'm sure that Titus will ask them.
Say that you can turn on the translation because questions will be in Russian or Kazakh, so you can hear them in English. There is an option to...
Okay, there's interpretation option. Please turn on the interpretation because all the questions might be coming in Russian or in Kazakh and they will be interpreted. So I hope your English interpretation is on. Thank you. So hello, my name is Andvar. I'm from the radio sector X media. I actually had a question about the project's inclusivity. So, and what vulnerable or marginalized groups of Nairobi and Kenya were engaged in this project, and how that were adapted and what results they achieved. For example, families with many children, or women survivors of violence, or ethnic minorities, or blind people, for example, or overall people with disabilities? How did you handle that?
So do I take each question, or I take a couple?
You can answer this question, then we will.
Okay. Yes, thank you, Anwar. I really like that question because it's at the core of what a just city is. When we were starting to discuss what a just city means to Kenya, I mentioned we had the Civil Society Urban Development Platform. In this platform, we had some organized groups that had been working, especially in the informal settlements. I must say that Nairobi City, 70% of it is informal settlements, and these people live on just 5% of the land. They lack access to housing, formal housing, water, electricity, etc. And it is these groups that informed our first two principles. The first one being dignity. And how did we realize this? We had a grassroots housing coalition who had been saying that, how is it possible that a whole family with teenagers can live in one room only? You can imagine there is no privacy for a teenager in that house. They may not have access to an indoor toilet. They have an external toilet where young women could not venture out at night because of harassment. They also told us in terms of most of them who are persons living with disability are not able to board our public transport because we use vans which do not have access, for example, for someone who needs to get in with a wheelchair. They live in houses whose toilets are not accessible for someone in a wheelchair or in crutches. And therefore, they were telling us, even when slum upgrading, which was done in Nairobi City, in Kibra, to improve their lives, many of them were not able to access these new houses because they were made with slippery tiles, or they were made with no lifts. They were made with no persons with disability-friendly toilets. And this is how their voices were able to shape us to say then, it's not just enough to do a slum upgrade, to build shiny new buildings. You have to consider the specific needs for these people. And that's the first one, dignity, and the second one, equity and diversity. Now, they are represented in the Just City Working Group through their leadership, who ensure that when we are engaging, their perspectives are not lost in the development policies and projects.
Thank you, Titus. We have another one question.
Rahmet. На русском, да?
Okay, thank you. Good day. Thank you for a very informative and very comprehensive presentation. Yes, truly, I was really curious to hear your ideas and your project implementation. So I'll have to think about that. However, I do have a question. Your project is called Just City. And of course, the lower strata, some marginalized strata of population that suffer from injustice the most. I'm talking about the impoverished people. I'm talking about people with disabilities. I'm talking about people with special needs and others. Well, generally, those are poor people, generally speaking. So did your project study and research some aspects of grievances with regard to the middle class or upper class that would have been expressed by those lower class, lower income class? So did they say that the average or medium class people or rich people are doing better than all? Did they have any unhappiness or discontent about that? Were they engaged in your project, or were there some grievances among the middle class people that that historical center is being developed and some historical buildings are being demolished, or historical center is being basically maimed, or the architectural image is being modified? So did you have anything like that?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I will zoom into one of our entry point topics that we chose to focus on, and which is affordable housing. And it had two phases that, according to our research, helped us to understand both social classes. For the lower classes, whom we coined a word, we call them the urban invisibles, because basically they are not seen by the policymakers. Even some middle class people don't recognize them, apart from when they need cheap labor as maids or as guards in their gates. But they never ask themselves, where does this person live? How do they come to work? How do they survive in the city? And when we zoomed into affordable housing, because it was interesting, because we had this big UN Habitat slum upgrading projects. And we wondered why they were not working for these poor people. And we realized one is that they were having communities being torn apart, because people were being moved from communities that they have been living together, helping each other because they lack social protection. And they were being moved into different apartments in different areas and losing some of that community belonging and sense. Secondly, we realized that they were being pushed to own these houses by paying small amounts over periods of 20 years. Yet these people do not have a permanent employment. How can they commit to buy this house for 20 years? And we realized that majority of the city dwellers are actually renters. They don't need to own a house. What they need is to access an affordable rental house so that they can do their thing in the city, with some who come to the city to earn and later turn back to the rural areas. So that was an interesting aspect for the lower classes. For the middle classes, we realized that what was being marketed as affordable housing was actually only possible for a 20-year mortgage. And the people who can afford this would not be even middle class, but upper classes, because it was coming to almost a third of the average salary of a middle class. And they felt left out, like the government was cheating them out when they say this is affordable housing, which is just maybe 20% cheaper than the market rate. And housing is really expensive in Kenya. So they had that grievance that, okay, why don't you consider giving us credit facilities or mortgage facilities that actually resonate with our capacity, instead of assuming that we are rich and we are able to afford. And finally, one of the interesting perspectives we had was some of the rich people would like to build affordable housing, because many of the houses in Nairobi are actually owned by rich people or even middle class people who go and access credit from banks, from cooperatives, and build these houses for rental. But they told us that, look, the government policy on credit interests, they are very high, such that when we borrow, we actually can't deliver these houses at the cost that the government is saying is affordable for the majority. How can you help us to push the government and the private sector to come up with affordable financing, and then we will borrow and we will be able to build the affordable houses that are so badly required. And finally, there were some grievances on the changing of the city's historical outlook, because we have a colonial inheritance from the British, who had established the first public housing in Nairobi. Some of these estates had good plans with social halls. Some had historical buildings that some of our freedom fighters had lived in, some with a cultural attachment and value. But when we had these upgrading plans, regeneration plans, they were tearing this down because they want to put up the houses like you see in China, you know, very high-rise blocks. There was some resistance to that, but unfortunately, the government and the big private sector was stronger. We were not able to stem that down, and it's continuing even now. So I can tell you, through the different engagements, we have learned through the journey that it's not just about the rights of the people, the poor, but also the responsibilities for even those who are able to make a city just.
Thank you. Thank you, Titus, a lot for answering all the questions. We unfortunately running out of time, so we will need to finish here. If participants will have more questions, I'm sure we can send you your email if it's okay with you. So maybe other questions will come up later and they can answer you. You can answer.
Thank you.
Thank you again for being here, for sharing Nairobi experience. We'll keep in touch. Thank you again and have a nice day. Мы приступим теперь сразу.
We now will start the discussion. We're somewhat behind the schedule, but we will catch up, I believe.